Todd Letts. I'm CEO of the Brampton Board of Trade and your host today. I'm delighted to welcome you to the third in a series of 4 interviews that we're doing with Ontario's provincial party leaders. And today we welcome Mike Schreiner, leader of the Green Party of Ontario. As you know, the Brampton Board of Trade is an association of business leaders, job creators, innovators, and economic development champions. Our business members employ more than 60,000 in Brampton in industries so diverse as manufacturing, logistics, technology, food processing. About 75% of our members represent small businesses employing less than 10 people in our vibrant restaurants, retail, and service industries. As we start today's discussion, please join me in acknowledging the land on which we gather and our commitments to foster renewed relationships built on the foundation of mutual understanding and respect. The Brampton Board of Trade operates in the city of Brampton within the region of Peel. The region is part of the treaty lands of the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. Now, for thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land and other regions along the corridor. Specifically, we acknowledge both the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe-Chippewa peoples, and the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. You know, as participants in today's event, we are coming together as one business community. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and to receive the same respect and opportunities regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope that in this event that you will join us in fostering a positive environment to ensure the safe and welcoming space for all. Before we get started, let me take a moment to point out some of the logistical features of our highlights of our platform here today. On the left of your screen, you have hopefully already noticed and taken advantage of the networking and expo areas of this platform. Please visit. We will have some time after the session as well for you to visit some of the expo areas where you'll find out about some of the services of the Brampton Board of Trade. You'll see on the right-hand side of your screen, the chat is ready and available for questions and chatting. Additionally, you are welcome to ask questions at any time to Jen Oldham from our team, who is monitoring and managing this event as expertly as she does every time we get together. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce and invite our chair, Donna Fagan-Pascal, to our virtual podium. Donna is and continues. Donna will not only excuse me, folks. I guess I need another coffee this morning. Donna, we're happy to have you here today. You will be doing the formal introduction of our guest today, but I have the honor of introducing you. You are a business leader here in Brampton, 20 years of experience in human resources, serving the last 17 as a senior HR executive for several Fortune 500 companies. Donna, you currently lead the human resources, communication, and PR functions at Dynacare. Dynacare, of course, is a leading Canadian health and wellness solutions provider. You serve as VP for those 3 very big functions: human resources, communications, and public relations. That has you leading a team of 35 professionals, and you're responsible for overseeing organizational effectiveness as well as for managing the Dynacare brand in its many communities that it serves. So Donna, thank you so much for joining us here today. We look forward to your interview with MPP Mike Schreiner.
Thank you, Todd. I am honored to be introducing Mike Schreiner today. Mike Schreiner, leader of the Green Party of Ontario and MPP for Guelph, is the first Green MPP and was elected to the Ontario legislature in 2018. Growing up on a farm, Mike was instilled with a passion for protecting people, animals, and the planet at a young age. As a leader of the Ontario Greens since 2009, Mike's constituents recognize him as a champion for climate action, income equality, and honest, transparent leadership. Mike is active at Queen's Park, working across party lines to be a strong advocate for climate action, local food and water initiatives, affordable housing, protecting Ontario's frontline healthcare workers, small business, and mental health. Since being elected, he has introduced bills to cap Ontario's carbon emissions, make reporting on yearly emissions numbers mandatory, eliminate mandatory doctor's notes for workplace illness, conserve drinking water, and get big money out of politics. Mike passed Ontario's first Green Party sponsored law in 2019, which protects electric vehicle drivers by making it illegal to block EV charging stations. Prior to entering politics, Mike was a successful entrepreneur, a small business owner, and one of the early advocates of local food movement. He founded multiple initiatives, including Local Food Plus, Wow Foods, and Earth Dance Organics to connect sustainable farmers with Ontario households. Mike and his wife, Sandy, and their two daughters now like to spend free time gardening, hiking, fishing, cycling, and staying active. Thank you for being here today, MPP Schreiner. I'll turn it over to you for your brief introductory remarks.
Well, thank you, Donna, for that very kind introduction. And it's a real honor to join all of you. And Todd, I just want to say thank you for that meaningful land acknowledgement. I just want to express the Ontario Green Party's commitment to the truth and reconciliation process. I too am speaking to you today from the traditional lands or treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And as Donna said, I'm a longtime entrepreneur before going into politics. I started my first business on a farm right outside of Guelph. And my business partner and I eventually moved that business to Brampton. And it was housed in Brampton for almost 20 years before we sold it. Thank goodness, right before the pandemic, because I know the last 2 years has been incredibly challenging for business owners of all sizes, for families and for communities. And it's one of the reasons at Queen's Park right now, I'm so focused on one, getting us through the final, hopefully, stages of this pandemic and really advocating for a green and caring recovery that addresses the affordability concerns that Ontarians have and also make sure that we invest in the emerging markets, attracting capital investment, building new careers and better jobs for people. You know, as a longtime small business owner, I just want to say that I really acknowledge the challenges small businesses in particular have faced. You know, the average debt for small businesses hover around $200,000 right now. And it's had a significant impact on people's jobs, our local economy, and people's mental health. And so that's why I am so focused right now on making sure that we have policies in place that create a level playing field for small businesses, that I continue to push the government to extend funding for the Ontario Small Business Support Grant, to provide an additional round of funding, and to expand the eligibility criteria, because I know a number of small businesses who have been significantly negatively impacted by the pandemic have not been able to access Ontario Small Business Support Grant funding. It's also why I am so focused on making sure we have a policy framework in place to capture capital investment in the fastest growing markets around the world. And that's in low carbon goods and services, so we can create new careers, better jobs, and sustainable prosperity in the green economy. And I think the innovation corridor in particular, which, you know, I would say includes Toronto, Brampton, Georgetown, Guelph, Kitchener-Waterloo, that entire corridor that we share together, are perfectly positioned to be global leaders in the fast-growing green economy. And in particular, I think Ontario is well positioned to have a mining to manufacturing supply chain for electric transportation and battery storage. The Stellantis plant In Brampton, I think, we need to make sure the investments are in place, that it maintains its job creation and industry leading manufacturing. I think we have huge potential in low carbon heating and cooling systems as we decarbonize our buildings and help people save money by saving energy through green building retrofit programs, which can create thousands of jobs and help small businesses and homeowners and renters reduce their energy costs. Huge opportunities in bioproduct development, especially creating a farm to manufacturing pipeline for bioproducts. Very proud of a lot of the work that the University of Guelph is doing and channeling those products into the automotive industry and other industries. Local food processing and manufacturing. I know from my food entrepreneur days in Brampton that Brampton, both from a logistics perspective, but also from a food manufacturing perspective, on the doorstep of the fourth largest consumer market in North America, also with export opportunities into the United States when it comes to local food. The digital economy, we're well positioned, biosciences and health sciences. And it's one of the reasons the Ontario Greens climate plan makes a significant commitment through a $5 billion EV mobility fund to help kickstart manufacturing and that mining to manufacturing supply chain. The United States, the southern United States alone attracted $25 billion last year in automotive electric vehicle manufacturing investment, $11.5 billion, the states of Kentucky and Tennessee alone. Those are dollars that should be coming to Ontario. We have the skilled labor force. We have the manufacturing knowledge to attract that capital. We simply need the political will and the government support to make it happen. And part of making that happen, and I want to close on this because I know that so many Ontarians are concerned about the affordability challenges. And if we're going to have a successful economy, we need to make sure we can attract the best and the brightest and address the labor force shortages that I know many businesses are facing. In order to do that, we need to make sure that people can have an affordable place to live in this province, an affordable place to live that doesn't require them to commute hours just to find a place to call home and to get to work. And it's why I'm so proud of the housing affordability plan the Ontario Greens released last June, that one major media outlet called a masterclass plan. Numerous other media outlets wrote glowing editorials. We've seen support from everyone from the realtors associations to anti-poverty activists, and it basically talks about evidence-based solutions to increasing the housing affordability supply without paving over our farmland, that feeds us, without paving over the wetlands that protect us from flooding and cleaning our drinking water, and doing it by both engaging with the private sector to increase housing supply, but also recognizing that government has to come to the table with financing to build deeply affordable housing that we haven't built in this province in 2 decades. And during that time, the housing affordability crisis has gotten worse and worse every year, to the point now where we're facing a housing affordability crisis. And I want to close by saying that I know there's been a lot of talk about the price of fuel at the gas pumps. Well, if Ontario truly wants to address the affordability challenges drivers face, we need to go electric. And we need to go electric as fast as possible, not only to attract that capital investment, but to save people money. Costs me $2 to $5 to fill up my electric vehicle at home overnight, and it costs about $10 to $15 at a high-speed charging station to fill it up, versus so many other people who are paying $100 or more to fill up their gasoline engine. Let's make life more affordable. The $25 billion a year we ship out of our province to buy fossil fuels from other jurisdictions, let's keep that money in Ontario, in the pockets of Ontario residents, and in the investment in our economy to create those jobs right here in Ontario. And I think Brampton is perfectly positioned to be a leader in this province in the growing green economy. And the Ontario Greens are here to partner with you and work with you to get it done. So let's get to work.
Thank you, MPP Schreiner, for those remarks. It's great to hear some of your insights and how you see the future and some of the opportunities for Ontario. I'd like to focus on the challenging past 2 years for Brampton businesses. You mentioned the importance of small businesses in your earlier remarks. I really worry about this latest round of restrictions. Could be the final straw for some. If you were Premier, what immediate relief would you offer businesses and workers?
Yeah, Donna, thanks for that question. And as a small business owner myself, it's near and dear to my heart. And it's why I've been pushing so hard for an additional round of funding through the Ontario Small Business Support Grant and an expansion of the eligibility. I can't tell you how hard my office has been working for businesses in my riding who were deemed ineligible or were unable to access funding. And so we've worked hard to get some of those businesses funding, but it's been a challenge. And I can tell you from my own business career, cash flow is everything. And when there's delays, and in some cases, some businesses had to wait 5-6 months to access funding, that puts a business in jeopardy. And as you know, a lot of small business owners, it's not just their business at risk. They put a mortgage on their home, and so it bleeds into their personal finances as well. And so my message to the Premier is I understand that when you're talking about another round of funding for it, that's another $1 billion. It's a lot of money, but kickstarting economic recovery will be so much more successful if we have already existing successful businesses who have stayed alive and survived, kickstarting that recovery, than it is, as you know, how hard it is to start a new business. And it takes time to build up those jobs and those employment prospects. And then I want to just finally close on this one, that we need a level playing field for small business. I found it deeply frustrating. And I know this is looking backwards. We need to look forward. But never again should small businesses be closed and their big box store competitors remain open. We need an even level playing field for small businesses. And that is an absolute commitment I will make when it comes to the regulatory framework businesses face, when it comes to funding opportunities that businesses face, when it comes to support grants that are available to businesses, when it comes to, let's hope we never have to go back to public health restrictions, but making sure it's done in a way that is fair for small businesses and that small businesses are on a level playing field.
Thank you, MPP Schreiner. From what I gleaned from that, access, speed, and fairness seem to be the key themes there to financial funding for small businesses. It looks like we're finally on the other side of this pandemic for the time being. Fingers crossed. What kind of long-term tools and strategies, such as sick leave programs, testing, and so on, would you prioritize to ensure we stay on top of this and that businesses can remain open without further interruptions?
Yeah, I think we need to utilize all the tools in the toolbox to avoid another lockdown and any further public health restrictions. I think testing and contact tracing is going to be critically key components of that. I've been a strong advocate for the province making sure we have the capacity to do that. And it's not just for COVID. I mean, scientists and health experts are predicting that we may see an increasing number of pandemics. So I think it's not only being prepared and having the capacity to do it with COVID, but future possible pandemics as well. Having proper ventilation and the supports to enable businesses to have proper ventilation, especially those more vulnerable workplaces where physical distancing is challenging and people have to come in and work on the warehouse floor or the shop floor, the manufacturing floor. And better ventilation will not only help when it comes to addressing COVID, but it'll increase worker productivity anyway. There's a lot of good studies showing that, just having high indoor air quality, it addresses concerns that people might have around asthma or other respiratory illnesses, other viruses such as the flu and colds. My gosh, I haven't had a cold in 2 years, I think, because we've been so careful about being masked and things like that. And so it's utilized, and then obviously continuing to roll out vaccines and making sure that if we are going to need, something like flu shots on an annual or semi-regular basis, making sure those are available. So we're utilizing all the tools in the toolbox. And I'll just close by saying I absolutely support 10 paid sick days. And I know as a small business owner, when we only had 15 employees, so when somebody's off, it really affects the business. So I understand some of the challenges, especially for small businesses, and we need to look at how government can partner with smaller businesses to make that happen. But I also know that, whether it's COVID or a cold or a flu, having my staff know that they're not going to bring, and having me have the peace of mind knowing they're not going to bring that illness into our business and have other workers get sick, and then we even have a bigger human resource challenge. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it benefits businesses as well, that we mitigate not only COVID but the spread of other illnesses, and forcing people to choose between going to work or sick or staying home. They should just be able to stay home and still pay the bills.
Thank you. I'd like to change it up a little and talk about goods movement, which is a huge priority for businesses and residents alike in Brampton. The province has proposed the GTA West Corridor, or Highway 413, to alleviate gridlock. You've stated your opposition to this project quite publicly. What's the alternative?
Yeah, thanks for that, Todd. If Todd was talking to me right now, I just want all of your members to know that Todd and I have had some very respectful, but some conversations on this particular issue. And so, as somebody who ran a delivery business out of Brampton for a while, I understand the logistical and transportation challenges people face. And so I think there are better alternatives than Highway 413. And I just want to tell you why I'm so opposed to Highway 413. We cannot afford to pave over 2,000 acres of the farmland that feeds us, that is part of a food and farming sector that creates over 880,000 jobs in the province, contributes $50 billion to our GDP. We can't afford to pave over the 75 wetlands that 413 would pave over, because those are the wetlands that clean our drinking water and protect us from flooding. And we can't unleash the kind of sprawl on additional farmland and wetlands that Highway 413 will facilitate. So what the Ontario Greens have been proposing is, first of all, better utilization of the 407. And actually, COVID presented an opportunity for government. The Ford government forgave the 407 operators $1 billion penalty because of the underutilization of the highway during COVID. That was a perfect negotiating opportunity for the province to say, let's have a dedicated truck lane to ship transport goods on the 407 that the province would help finance and make possible. And let's build out better transit in the region. So we absolutely need to have a GO station and a GO train line that runs out to Bolton. We need to immediately get more electric GO buses, providing regional transportation connections, and direct connections, Brampton to Orangeville, Brampton to Caledon, Brampton to Bolton, Brampton to Georgetown and Acton. We need to make sure that we implement all-way two-way GO along the innovation corridor, which would obviously, connect Brampton and my riding of Guelph. And so I think through better transit opportunities, as well as better utilization of the 407, we can address most of those transportation concerns that people have. And then finally, I would say, let's build livable, affordable, connected communities so people don't have to commute, hours to be able to find an affordable place to live. Let's build homes near where people work, so people can live, work, shop, and play in their local community and support those local businesses in their neighborhoods.
Thank you. That's thank you for sharing. And you stole my follow-up question on the 407. How do you see a pathway solution? So that's great. Appreciate it. I'd like to talk a little bit about infrastructure. And Brampton has a lot of high priority infrastructure projects. The biggest top of mind example is proposed Main Street LRT extension. As a context, there are two proposals: a route on the surface and a route with a small tunnel portion. The tunnel portion would cost as much as $1 billion more. And is this something I guess the question is, if you were elected, could you commit to funding the Main Street LRT extension? And what considerations would be given to the cost differences and the two options, the tunnel or the surface?
Yeah, we absolutely commit to building the LRT in Brampton. I've been a vocal supporter of it for years and was deeply disappointed that it wasn't approved for extension up to the Brampton GO station. And I think we need to approach these kind of projects in the most fiscally responsible way, because we want to make it the biggest bang for our buck. So I prefer a surface option because it is far more fiscally responsible, and would absolutely commit not only to the LRT, but to significantly expanding transit options in the entire region. As I indicated in my previous answer, we know that the most affordable way to get people around is through transit, and we also know it's a key component to crushing climate pollution, which is another crisis that's barreling down on us that we're going to have to address. And transportation is the largest source of climate pollution in Ontario, and so driving down those emissions through electrified public transit is the most affordable way, and quite frankly, the way that creates the most jobs. I mean, almost every study I've seen indicates that transit construction creates twice as many jobs for the same dollar invested as highway construction does. And then you have the ongoing operating jobs that come with it as well. So it's a job creator, and it's more fiscally responsible, and it helps reduce climate pollution.
Any preference, surface or tunnel?
Surface. Yeah. Sorry, Donna. I thought I made that clear that absolutely our preference would be the most fiscally responsible approach, which would be the surface route.
Okay, great. There's also two-way GO, which is a possibility for the region. What kind of commitment would you make to expanding that all-way two-way GO to the Brampton area?
Yeah, I've been a strong advocate and proponent for all-day two-way GO in the innovation corridor for years now. I gave the previous government a lot of grief around not delivering on that promise, and I continue to push the current government as well. Have a great relationship with members of all parties along the corridor that we share. I mean, obviously, it's in the best interest of Guelph, my riding, but in Brampton as well. And so absolutely we'll continue to push for that. We have a funding commitment for that in our climate action plan. And I also want to say on infrastructure in Brampton as well, that transportation infrastructure is vitally important, and that's been a big part of our conversation here. But also making sure that you have the health resources, another fully funded hospital in Brampton, the municipality, that the province steps in and really helps municipalities through their fiscal challenges, especially around providing operational funding for transit. So we've committed to uploading 50% of the operating cost of transit so we can maintain the affordability of transit, take pressure off of the municipal property tax base, which directly affects the bottom line of businesses paying property taxes and residents, of course, when it comes to addressing housing affordability. And so we also have to be looking at the kinds of infrastructure we need to build livable, affordable communities, and making sure we're doing it in a way that doesn't put too much pressure on the property tax base.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your commitment to transit. I have to ask about the next election. In the past federal election, the Green Party didn't have a single candidate in any of Brampton's 5 ridings. Are you actively working to ensure the party runs candidates in Brampton, and how will you prioritize this during your campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. We will have a full slate of candidates in every riding in the province, including all of the Brampton ridings. I've already been having some fantastic conversations with very solid and exciting candidates in Brampton. And I just want to just address, I know the Federal Green Party had its challenges over the last year, and just want to be clear to all your members that the Ontario Green Party, we're a separate party with a separate governance structure, separate organizational culture from the federal party. And the Ontario Green Party is going into this next election stronger than we've ever been. We've had record fundraising years, which, the entrepreneur in me is very proud of the fact that, people in our communities across the province believe in our vision, our values, our message, the hard work we've been doing at Queen's Park, and have been willing to donate in record numbers to the party. We have our largest staff, largest volunteer group of people out knocking on doors and calling and connecting and engaging with voters. And so we're very excited that we're going to run our biggest, best funded campaign we've ever run with a full slate of candidates across the province, including a strong slate of candidates in Brampton. And I think our vision and values really connect with a lot of the exciting things that are happening in Brampton, including your community energy plan, the investments being made in green economy jobs, the vision around starting to build net zero communities, the district energy projects with Sheridan, for example. There's a lot of exciting efforts and opportunities in Brampton, and I think some green MPPs to champion them will be huge benefits to the city.
Okay, great. Let me ask you about a minority government. If there is any scenario where there was a minority government, conservative government, where would you allow Doug Ford to lead that minority government?
Well, right now, given the Ford government's policies, I cannot see myself or Ontario Green members supporting the Ford government. This particular government has rolled back environmental protections, and quite frankly, a lot of environmental protections that were brought in by previous conservative government. So almost undermining the conservative legacy. And at a time when we're facing a climate and ecological crisis, when we're seeing significant threats to people, property, and communities, especially from flooding, but also other extreme weather events like forest fires, etc., which, at one point last summer, the Toronto region, the GTA, we had the worst air quality for a few days anywhere in the world because of so many of the forest fires in Western Canada and Northern Ontario and the wind blowing in this direction, that we simply can't afford a government that is going to undermine the, pave over the farmland that feeds us, that is so vital to our economy, the wetlands that clean our drinking water and protect us from flooding, and just dismantle a lot of the policies that, that will hurt Ontario's economic opportunities in the fastest growing emerging markets in the green economy. I just don't think that's the direction where we're going to generate prosperity, nor the kind of liberal communities that we want our children and grandchildren to grow up in.
So I'm going to continue on that same line of questioning. So the next question on that, so if you hold that balance of power where you have an opportunity to make a decision on which party is in power, will you make the move to make the second place party premier?
Yeah, I don't want to get too far down the whole speculative rabbit hole here, to be honest. I'll say this. I think if there's any party across Canada that has shown an ability to work across party lines and collaborate with other parties, it's been the Green Party. You see that in PEI, where the Greens as official opposition have been working well with the Conservative government in that case. You saw it in British Columbia, where the BC Greens worked in collaboration. In that case, it was a BC NDP minority government. In New Brunswick, you're seeing the exact same thing. And I would say here in Ontario, I'm proud to say that as critical as I just was of the Ford government's environmental policies, I was able to collaborate with a Conservative member to pass the first green bill, which you mentioned, to protect electric vehicle drivers. And so I'm willing to work with members of any party, including the Conservative Party. And even at a time when I was criticizing them on certain things, work with them to pass a bill that I thought benefited the people of Ontario. Proud to say that I initiated and successfully got through the legislature and passed the first bill in Ontario history that was co-sponsored by all 4 parties in the legislature to declare the month of August Emancipation Month. And so I think I've demonstrated an ability to work across party lines, to work with any party in the legislature to get things done that benefit people. And I'll certainly do that, whether it's a minority or a majority government after the next election.
Thank you, MPP Schreiner. Well, it's going to be a very interesting 5 months in Ontario, and I think you'll be in the center of it. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Donna, you know what? A real pleasure. And you're a good interviewer. You ask good questions, and even a few tough questions. But anyway, thank you so much. A real honor to join you. And I just want to say, Todd, how much I've just enjoyed the conversations we've had over the years about, how we can build prosperity and support businesses in Brampton.
Well, thank you so much, Donna, and thank you so much, Mr. Schreiner. We're just so happy that you were able to spend
I think Todd is frozen here.
Yeah, I was just about going to ask you, Don. So, another thing I'm really supporting, and I will say that, I'll say a nice thing about the Ford government. The last budget had a significant increase of funding for broadband across the province. And even just, north of Brampton and in Caledon, we don't have sufficient broadband. So it's a huge issue. I'm going to keep pushing the provincial government to flow that money. It's not flowing as fast as it needs to communities, but we absolutely need to improve broadband service across the province.
For sure. And we're seeing it live.
Absolutely.
Maybe what I can do, I do have the closing remarks, and maybe for the purposes of closing, I can close on behalf of Todd, if he doesn't mind. So again, thank you for your time today, MPP Schreiner, and it was a pleasure interviewing you. I'd like to say, for those that joined us virtually today, as a reminder, we have an evening celebrating women and being inspired by women in our business community. And we'll be hearing from myself and other inspiring women, inspirational women, and we'll be awarding the Naseem Samani Memorial Leadership Excellence Award to Dr. Janet Morrison, who is the President and Vice Chancellor at Sheridan College. Very deserving recipient. The keynote speaker of the evening will be the Honorable Kamal Kara, Minister for Seniors, and she will be sharing her experiences and how she has been able to break the bias. The Brampton Board of Trade has a lot of other events coming up where we can learn about and be in person and kick off its first Environmental Energy Forum. This will be held on April 21st at the Garden Banquet Convention Center. Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Dave Piscini, will be one of our keynote speakers, along with panel discussions on the topic of energy conservation and building towards the future. Our Business Excellence Awards is scheduled for May 5th at the Pearson Convention Center. We are so excited we're going to be in person. We're starting to prepare, and why I'm asking for your help to doing some work for nominations for this award. Take a minute and think of the businesses that deserve a nomination. The nomination form can be found on our website. And as we wrap up today, I'd like to invite you to stay in network. On the left side of your screen, you'll see the icons for the expo to explore. The networking icon will take you to the one-on-one networking, and the sessions icon will take you to the group discussions with the fellow attendees. Stay, chat, and build your network. And thank you for joining us today.